Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I've got a very special guest standing by today. He's a Canadian favorite. I like to say it's John Carpay. He's waiting in the wings. He's the president of the JCCF. We're going to talk about a report. There's a new report come out. It is called Manufacturing Consent. And I find the title of that very intriguing for many reasons. But do you ever think that, nowadays you look at your peers, your mates, your work colleague, your colleagues, your family, and you kind of think, okay, with some of them, you think, okay, I get along with you. We think the same. And then there's some people in the family and your peer group where you're like, we know not to bring things up because we don't get along. So the world, obviously, I don't have to tell anyone watching, is very much divided. But I think one group looks like the other group like they're crazy, and then one group looks at that group like they're crazy, and never the twain shall meet. So how did we get here? I think a lot of how we got here has to do with, of course, nowadays our social media algorithms play a huge part. But I think what plays the biggest part is news and government propaganda. You get those two things hand in hand, and you've got a recipe for manufacturing consent. So this report, let me just pull it up for you here. This is what it. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh, there's my guest. Hi, John.
Great.
I'll bring you in, I guess, because I forgot you were going to pop on in here. But while you're here, let's take a look at the top of this report. This is it. You can find it on the JCCF website. Manufacturing Consent, Government Behavioral Engineering of Canadians. And basically, this report says that over the past decade, the government of Canada has, with little public comment, developed a set of mechanisms, behavioral, legislative, and financial, designed to covertly influence how Canadians think and act. And so we're going to talk about some of this, but basically, at the center of this system is the Impact and Innovation Unit, located within the Privy Council Office. And within that, they have these strategies called nudge strategies, right? They've done a lot of things to influence Canadians. So first of all, John, welcome to my podcast.
Glad to be with you and all your viewers and listeners.
Oh, thank you. And we're gonna break down this report, but to start with, how would you describe nudge theory, and how would you explain what was discovered in this report?
Well, there's a big distinction between governments providing us with information that might be important to us, that we should have, versus behavioral scientists who, at taxpayers' expense, are influencing our behavior in what should be a democracy, which means there should be fair and honest debate about different topics. People will disagree on all kinds of, taxes and immigration and abortion and euthanasia and Aboriginal rights and mandatory vaccination policies and lockdowns and on and on and on. People disagree. And in a democracy, there's something very sinister about the government using our tax dollars for something like the Impact and Innovation Unit to influence our attitudes and thinking and behavior in one direction. In this case, this is about the COVID vaccine. And so the Impact and Innovation Unit was busy crafting messages on how to get Canadians to roll up their sleeves and get injected, rather than simply providing unbiased information so that we can have informed consent.
So basically, this is at the center of this system is the Impact and Innovation Unit, like I mentioned, located within the Privy Council. It's a way to influence Canadians to accept government initiatives. I mean, as we all remember, the COVID narratives it was like government and media in lockstep. So it was like you couldn't tell one from the other. They were like this. They got married in a
Yeah.
sense, right? And the influence was so big. And what else can you tell me about it? How they got into lockstep in such a and there was no dissent even within the government and even within the media, other than me. Like,
Yeah, I don't know what it is about, groupthink, but sometimes a whole bunch of people, including really good people and smart people and, people with PhDs that have brilliant minds, and yet everybody gets infected with this groupthink and everybody's marching along. I don't really have an answer, so anything I said, I would just be guessing. But one thing that was creepy about the Impact and Innovation Unit, and they're not small, they're involved in $725 million worth of projects. That's what they say themselves on their own website. So they crafted the message, vaccine is safe and effective, so get vaccinated. That was the message. And they had developed that message before the clinical trials were even completed. They had it ahead of time. These vaccines that were became available first voluntarily in 2021, and then by September, October, it was mandatory on pain of becoming a second-class citizen if you didn't take it. And these vaccines were still in clinical trials, and yet they had the message is safe and effective. And when the reports started to emerge, almost immediately, as soon as it became available to the public, we started hearing reports of children dying, teenagers dying, older people dying, top performing athletes dropping dead while they were playing their sport, or the parents of healthy young men finding their sons dead in bed, died in their sleep. And so rather than getting information out to Canadians and respecting the principle of informed consent, what they did was they tested different messages to see what is the most effective way to get Canadians to let go of their fears and anxieties when we have these reports about young men dropping dead, athletes dropping dead, young men getting myocarditis, serious adverse heart condition. How do we get people to relax and not take these reports too seriously? That is what they spent our tax dollars on, crafting different messages, testing different messages, and then using the most effective message possible to get Canadians to keep on rolling up their sleeves to get injected.
Ugh, like we paid for this to attack us in a way.
We sure did.
The author of the report is Nigel Hannaford. So I just want to get that out there, that just give him some props for writing this article. I think it's a 25-page report, and it says here, this is from the article: with the arrival of COVID, lockdowns, and vaccine mandates, the government of Canada sharply expanded the role of the IIU, tasked to advise the Public Health Agency of Canada on securing vaccination compliance. This reminded me, when I read the report, it reminded me of, a couple of things. It reminded me of Event 201, which, if anyone doesn't know, that was in 2019. It was a Bill and Melinda Gates tabletop exercise they ran at Johns Hopkins University, and they basically said, if COVID were to happen, here's how it would happen. Actually, I have a little clip of it, and it's shocking to look at. To me, even to this day, it is shocking to look at. This is a minute and a half.
It began in healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic.
We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
You know, gosh, when you look at that clip, I just see everything we lived through, and that was all
What year was that?
2019.
That was from 2019, what we just saw.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that they pre-planned all this. So like, I know that's an example of what happened in America, and this is a Canadian study, but that's exactly what happened here, and it's exactly what happened in England, because this report is based on some things from the UK also. But look at what they did. Everything they did, they told us. The press conference, the doctor going, "Oh, we're going to need a vaccine," the fake news, this fake news, and it's all like this pre-planned stuff. It's like, do we not have any rights as citizens to like, the government shouldn't be abusing us like this? That's what I feel like it is.
We've had a slow decline over the course of decades where children are getting a very one-sided education that only talks about the good things that government can do for people, which is fine. I'm not an anarchist. We need governments, for example, to fund and administer an independent court system where you have hopefully independent and unbiased judges for the peaceful resolution of disputes, so we're not resolving our disputes with baseball bats. So there's definitely a role for government, but what kids for generations now, or decades rather, what kids have not been taught is that in the 20th century, more people were murdered by their own government than the total number of soldiers that died on the battlefield. When you look at the National Socialists in Europe during World War II, when you look at Stalin, when you look at the Holodomor, the genocide, starvation of the Ukrainians, we look at Mao Zedong in China, Pol Pot in Cambodia, you've got more people murdered by their own governments than the number of soldiers dying on the battlefield. So there's no nuance in what's being taught. If people had a proper appreciation of government as an entity that can do some good things and should do some things, can do great good, but can also do great evil, then you understand why we need limits and restraints on government. But if the only thing you've been taught is, government is all good and all wise and all knowing, government always has our best interests at heart, politicians never lie, politicians always speak the truth. If that's what you've been indoctrinated into, then you are a sitting duck for having your rights violated by government.
Yeah, very well said. And I think that the mindset has to shift. The doctor may not always be right when he's giving you 10 prescriptions for something. Maybe there's vitamins, there's some good food or exercise. Maybe the government always isn't right when they're getting on TV and telling you certain things, which brings me to this clip. This is just like epitomizes what this report, Manufacturing Consent, is about. And it just shows us. It just shows us so much. Let's take a look at this.
We're all in this together.
We've come so far in the fight against COVID, it's time to finish this pandemic for good. So get vaccinated. If you know someone who hasn't, talk to them. For our kids, for our communities, for our economy, it's how we get forward together.
Vaccines are safe and effective for use. Vaccines are the best way for you to protect yourself, your family, and your community. So get vaccinated. Let's fight COVID-19 together.
Pour vous protéger vous-même, pour protéger les plus fragiles d'entre nous, pour protéger l'ensemble de la population, le meilleur moyen connu demeure le vaccin. S'il vous plaît, soyez responsables, soyez solidaires, faites-vous vacciner. Merci.
We all agree getting vaccinated is the way forward. We're all in agreement this is not a partisan issue, so please get vaccinated.
We're united, and it's time to get the shot. Vaccines save lives, they're how we're going to beat COVID, and it's time for everyone to do it. Get the shot.
Get the shot.
I
Well, we're all, it's intimidation, right? It's like you don't want to be the odd man out, right? Because and there's something about human nature, we're not as bad as sheep, but there's something a little bit sheep, like we don't like to be the odd man out. It feels more comforting. I've done it myself sometimes. There's a big, like a conference going on, and it's in a big convention center. I'm not sure where to go, but there's a lot of people walking in one direction. And then I think, maybe these people are all going to the same event. If there's some big dinner, fundraising dinner for a charity or something, right? And you're in a building, you haven't been there before, but you kind of, it's like 10 minutes before the dinner is supposed to start, and you just join the other people because you think, maybe, and that's okay if you're following a crowd to get to a location. But it can't be the way that we think about when there's laws that violate our rights and freedoms. We can't just acquiesce just because it looks like 80% of the people are in favor of it.
Yeah, well, that's one example of following the crowd, because you're like, okay, lots of people are going that way, I guess I'll go that way. I suppose that is in our human nature. But isn't it funny how they got them all to, how did they get them to do that? That was like a blast from the that's passing. Jagmeet Singh. Who was the lady? I forgot her name.
Green Party leader. I forget her name.
Yeah, I forget her name. Anime Paul or something like that. And seeing Trudeau and everybody, it's like, and they got them all together to stand there and say, get vaccinated, everybody get vaccinated. So that's why all your friends and family are like, well, I guess I better do it. Imagine if they got them all together to say something like, your rights and freedoms mean something. Free speech means something. Imagine if they had everybody in a room saying things that we want. Hey, maybe we should work on our oil and gas. Maybe we should work on our economy. Maybe we should be Canada first. Maybe if all of those guys got there and stood in a room and said something like that, something like what we want to hear, but no, they all got in a room and told us to like make ourselves sicker. It's crazy, isn't it? But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's one thing. They're free to promote their own opinions, but things got really ugly in October of 2021 when, if you did not get the shot, we had students kicked out of university, we had people fired from their jobs. In British Columbia, Bonnie Henry fired remote workers. These are like health administrators who have no contact with patients. They're just working from their computer from home, no contact with colleagues or patients. They got fired. And the contractors that they were replaced with did not need to be injected with the COVID vaccine. It was just, it was just horrific. And so many people were just cheering this on mindlessly with this false slogan, well, you have a choice. And it's a false logic, because if somebody points a gun to your head and says, give me your wallet, otherwise I'm going to pull the trigger, you also do have a choice. You could choose to hand over your wallet, or you could choose to not hand over your wallet and see if the guy's bluffing or not. You do have a choice. So you had otherwise intelligent people that would say, well, you have a choice, nobody's forcing this on you. But it's like, well, yeah, you have a choice, but so many people took the vaccine because they still wanted to be able to travel. Snowbirds wanted to go to the US in the winter. Students wanted to stay in university. People wanted to keep their jobs. And these were massive human rights violations, contrary to the Nuremberg Code, which requires that there's fully informed, fully voluntary consent, no pressure, no manipulation. And it was really awful that what happened in 2021.
It was so awful, and there's no consequences, and we're supposed to pretend like nothing happened. Yeah. I really hope for consequences. I told my kids the other day, I'm like, this is the hill I'm going to die on, or whatever. They're like, oh, get over it. Like they're like that now, the kids. But I can't let you go without maybe just bringing up, because maybe people watching will be like, manufacturing consent. People do remember Noam Chomsky having written the book, and I think it was 1988 or something. And the funny thing is he got manipulated by propaganda. Like, the one guy you'd think would see this coming a mile away couldn't figure it out. Let me see if I've got this up here. Let's just play a little bit of this is Noam Chomsky.
3. The next one, air on again. What are your thoughts on mandating vaccines?
Well, it's a mixed story. I think people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is not to force them to, but rather to insist that they be isolated. If people decide, I am willing to be a danger to the community by refusing a vaccine, they should then say, well, I also have the decency to isolate myself.
Wow. See, even the guy that co-wrote manufacturing consent cannot figure it out, right? He can't get it together. I find that just staggering. Hey,
Well, this is another element of human nature. You know, we talked about there's something sheep-like within human nature. Another aspect is that most people, if they've heard something hundreds of times or thousands of times, they will come to accept it as true. And that just seems to be across the board, unless we happen to know a lot about the topic. So if I was an expert on motorcycles and if I was firmly convinced that Harley Davidson is the best kind, I would be impervious. I could hear hundreds of messages that the Kawasaki motorcycle is the best, and it wouldn't impact me. However, if I was somebody who doesn't know anything about motorcycles and I kept on hearing this message, Kawasaki motorcycles are the best, and I heard it thousands of times, I would probably, you know, without even realizing it, I'd come to accept that as true, even though I've never thought about it. And so it's the same with, you know, people that were listening to the CBC and the other government-funded media, and they heard thousands of times that the vaccine is safe and effective, which is not true. They heard thousands of times that COVID is an unusually deadly killer. It's going to be like the Spanish flu of 1918. It's going to kill tens of millions of people. It's really, really dangerous for everybody. It threatens everybody. So people had heard that thousands of times, and then they heard about the vaccine supposedly stopping transmission, which it didn't. And people just come to accept that. And then people condone the human rights violations. I was in Winnipeg about 2 years ago, and I went to the Canadian Human Rights Museum in Winnipeg, and it's worth visiting. It's quite disturbing and upsetting. They've got all the cases of genocide and racism and discrimination, and within Canada and internationally. The scary thing was, for almost every case of genocide or racism or discrimination, at the time it was happening, most people supported it.
Yeah.
That was the scary part. And it seems, I don't know if humanity is ever going to get to a better place, but it just seems like it takes us, 20, 40, 60 years to look back and go, oh, what were we thinking? That was so wrong. But yeah, like at the time, people are going, yeah, bring it on. Let's have more of this.
Yes, that is very true. Actually, I went to Cambodia once, like I don't know, 25 years ago, and I was watching some documentary, and there a crowd was rallying against somebody, and this guy was saying, and I didn't want to, but I did what the crowd did. They were kind of doing something brutal to somebody, and he got enchanted and went along with what the crowd was doing, even though he didn't want to. But in the end, he got caught up in the frenzy. So I believe what you're saying totally about that museum in Winnipeg. I mean, people just go along with it. But you know what? We can't go along to get along. I think you just can't. I don't fly like that, and I'm sure you don't either. But anyway, where can people read the full report? What's your website again?
So it's www.jccf.ca. So JCCF is Justice Center Constitutional Freedoms, JCCF. And the report is there. You can download it. You can print it off. You can read it. Also, if you want to receive an email newsletter, you can sign up for it on our website, www.jccf.ca. If you want an email, we only send out like 1 or 2 per month on our court cases and papers and projects. So people are welcome to sign up for that if they like.
That's nice because then your inbox doesn't get flooded. It's nice just to have that's perfect. That's just perfect. Yeah.
Once or twice a month is perfect. That's a sweet spot. No more than that.
No more than that. We can't keep up with everything. John Carpay, thank you so much. It was really lovely to spend some time with you. And I thank you for jumping on my podcast and talking about this. And I hope I talk to you again soon.
I hope so too. Have a great rest of the day.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. It was great to have a chat with John and talk about some interesting. Well, there you go. I mean, if you think it was an accident, it ain't no accident. So next time you hear somebody say, "Oh, well, we did our best. They did their best. They didn't know." Sometimes people say that. When I run into them, like people that I used to work with at Global, I've run into 2 people who have said, "We didn't know. It was a crazy time. We were doing our best. We knew they weren't looking." Anyway. Okay. Anita K is how you find me on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this chat and we'll catch you. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, give it a like, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be great. And we will catch you again in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.